we haven't had the time to process day 3 of the NFL draft yet, but we do know this. The New York Giants won the first 2 days of the NFL draft, a special edition Capital Region Sports Saturday. Brady, Farkas, Zach By-in here with you until 6 p.m. Zach, you're looking at me quizzically. We've been on the air for 20 minutes. The New York Giants won the first 2 days of the NFL draft when we're talking about our New York teams.
You think so?
Yes, they got Eli Apple, a defensive back out of Ohio State at the number 10 pick. Some say maybe they reached on him, but bottom line is you lose Prince Amukamara.
Yep.
You were last against the pass last season. You needed help in the defensive secondary, so you signed Janoris Jenkins. You get Eli Apple. Then you go out and you get Sterling Shepard, who was maybe the biggest wild card home run threat in this wide receiver class. You go get him out of the slot. He's going to be a slot receiver. You pair him with Odell Beckham Jr. Oh, and then, by the way, you go grab a safety in round 3, which helps you, in addition to Landon Collins in the defensive backfield. Again, you were last against the pass. The Giants, Jerry Reese, for all the grief that he gets, he's had a home run through the first 2 days of the draft.
Yeah, he has. It's been a good draft. There's no doubt about it. And I'm not going to sit here and say the Giants didn't have a good draft, but I'll say that the Bills, to me, of the 3 New York teams, won the draft, and it's between the G-men and the Buffalo Bills.
We all agree the Jets had an awful draft.
Yeah,
so far.
I
through 2 days, just the two.
I was gonna say through the first 2 days, I questioned some of the New York Jets moves, but I really like what the Buffalo Bills did. Shaq Lawson is a playmaking defensive end out of Clemson, 6'3", 270. Saw him the past 2 years, particularly this last year, show a ton of toughness. Played through injury. He wasn't supposed to be there. If you look at some previous mock drafts, he was higher up people's draft boards, and they needed a defensive end because Mario Williams no longer with the team after a lackluster season. He's in Miami now, so we needed someone, and I say we because I'm a diehard Buffalo Bills fan.
You're wearing a Sammy Watkins shirt right now.
Yes,
of course, you're going to love the Clemson-based pick for Rex Ryan.
I do have my Sammy time shirt on. No, but removing emotion from it, I give the Bills up until this point an A plus. You needed another defensive end to start opposite of Jerry Hughes. Mario Williams leaves. Shaq Lawson is a day 1 starter, and then so they take him at 19, and then at number 41 they trade up and get Reggie Ragland, the inside linebacker from Alabama.
Love that pick.
He's another day 1 starter. Doug Whaley, the general manager of Buffalo, said that he had contemplated taking him at 19, where they got Shaq Lawson. The fact that he was still there in that second round is huge. This is a 4-year player from Alabama, a 2-year starter, a national champion, one of the most elite defenses in the entire nation, SEC proven, and he was their guy at that inside linebacker spot. I think he's another guy, an immediate starter. I don't know if he's going to be, on the field every single play. I'm reading that he has a little bit of trouble diagnosing passing plays, but I'll tell you what, if you can, both of those guys, day 1 starters, if you can pencil them right in, and we're 2 days in, I think that's a huge victory. And at the same time, these were big time needs. And 2 guys that you didn't actually expect to be there. And that's why I give them the tiebreaker over the Giants, because you can't tell me that an hour before the draft started that the G-men were planning on taking Eli Apple. And because of that sort of fluid situation is why I give the nod to Buffalo.
Yeah, they wanted Jack Conklin, the offensive lineman. They wanted Floyd, the linebacker. They don't get either of them. Chicago trades up over them. Things get a little hectic for the Giants. The bottom line is, even if you didn't love Eli Apple at 10, you do love Eli Apple, the player. He's out of Ohio State. The Bills took Adolphus Washington, defensive tackle from Ohio State, again in round 3. I do like that pick as well. But Eli Apple out of Ohio State is a good playmaking, young, can be molded into what Prince Amukamara was, who just left. Kyle Hendrickson, Shenandoah graduate, was on the coaching staff at Ohio State for the last 3 years. He told us about how good Eli Apple is.
I think Eli's a guy that kind of came out a little bit out of nowhere. He was a redshirt sophomore last year, so he's still really young. He's only 20 years old, and he only played 2 years at Ohio State. Started 2 years. He a really high upside guy, though. At the combine, he measured in at 6'1". It's really tough to find corners that big, and he ran a 4.4. That size speed combination is pretty tough to find. And the guy behind him, Hargraves, who I think maybe Giants fans thought they might be taking, he measured in a lot shorter and a bit slower.
So we've got a big physical corner who can run. And in this nature of pass offenses, that's the kind of defensive back that you need. You look at what the Seattle Seahawks did. You look at what Denver did to win the Super Bowl with Aqib Talib. This is the way that defensive backs are being built, and the Giants got themselves a good one. That is why I give the Giants the edge in the draft through the first 2 days.
And how about how many picks came from Ohio State in that first round?
God, 5 in the first round. We're
crazy.
over 10 through days 2. And look, day 3, I know day 3 started at noon today, but we need full time to process it. We had 10 Buckeyes through just the first 2 days.
I know. And then how many Alabama guys went yesterday? And, you know, one out of every, and I heard this on the way in here, 1 out of every 5 picks through the first 2 rounds came from either Ohio State or Alabama. And that is just crazy. I saw Saban and Urban Meyer talking night one. Did you see that when they were kind of, they're hanging out and they're talking and they're conversing, but it was very cold. I mean, it was very the competition level there. Who can put more guys out, and obviously that's a huge thing for recruiting. It was pretty interesting to watch. Pretty cool.
I can't imagine being in that conversation because Urban Meyer has some personality. Nick Saban doesn't have a whole lot of personality.
Well, from what I saw when they were chit chatting, like. Saban was like trying to talk to him and was patting him on the back, and Urban Meyer was just kind of like staring at him coldly. And from what I have heard, Urban Meyer's real cold with the other coaches. He was on set earlier in the year with Brian Kelly and wouldn't really look at him. And I'll tell you what, these guys are, they're fighting for their lives in the recruiting circuit. Although they're the top alpha dogs, they're still trying to pigeonhole themselves as the 1A. It was just pretty cool to watch. And when they're all in that same room and they're following their guys up and trying to high five guys on the way to the stage, it's just an interesting dynamic there.
It's Capital Region Sports Saturday, the special edition, 4 to 6 p.m. Brady Farkas, Zach By with you here on 104.5 The Team and 104.5theteam.com. Zach, Steph Curry, okay, has the knee injury. Going to be reevaluated here in about a week. The original thought was that he was going to miss 2 weeks. We're about halfway through that timeline. If Steph Curry, even if he does come back 100% healthy right at that 2 weeks, or if he doesn't, are the Warriors still the favorite here in these NBA playoffs?
No, I don't. No, I really don't. And going back to what you just said, there is 0% chance that Steph Curry is going to return at 100%. I've sprained my MCL on 2 different occasions. That is a month-long process to try to get back. And the stark contrast of not participating in any game for weeks at a time and then hopping back in to playoff intensity basketball, I have major concerns. Brady, he didn't look right when he came back after the sprained ankle. Yeah. He was operating like maybe 75%. And in the playoff games that he played in, he was getting like 16 points a game. That's almost half his average from the regular season. And you compound the sprained MCL. It's one thing when the Warriors are able to stay afloat against, the 5th worst defensive team in the league, Houston, that, was in the same company as the Lakers and the Sixers and the Kings defensively.
What a train wreck the Rockets were. Do you see
it's hard to watch.
The lack of communication, the lack of cohesion on that roster between Harden and Howard and just
and
everybody.
The rest of it was so illustrated to me when Harden hit that shot and the bench didn't react.
Yes,
I mean, that's top down stuff. I mean, that's why, all the analytical stuff, it doesn't take into account for the greatest variable of them all, human beings.
Team chemistry.
And that's what I'm saying. James Harden is not a team first guy. He's clearly not a leader and clearly doesn't demand the respect of his teammates, and he sure as hell doesn't lead by example on either end of the court, really. Very one-dimensional, pure offensive on one end, doesn't make his teammates better than defensively. He's a train wreck. But so it's one thing for the Warriors to beat a team like that, but whoever they meet in the Western Conference Finals, because they're going to beat the Blazers here. Whoever they meet, San Antonio or Oklahoma City, if they don't have a 100% Steph, I think whoever comes out of this semifinals matchup between OKC and the Spurs, I think is going to play for the NBA championship.
I think the Warriors are still the favorite. I have to give the nod to a team that just won 73 games, most in NBA history. They're the reigning champions. If you're looking at teams that could beat them, The Clippers would have had a chance without a healthy Steph Curry. They lose Chris Paul and Blake Griffin. They're eliminated, and they wouldn't have been able to beat them even without those guys. So then you look at Oklahoma City. I love Durant. I love Westbrook. I don't think that they match up great, though, with Golden State. Okay, you got who's guarding Klay Thompson? Kevin Durant guards Klay Thompson. Serge Ibaka guards Festus Ezeli. Bogut is still big inside if he's in the lineup. Sean Livingston's a big combo guard,
no doubt,
that could give trouble. Iguodala is a hard matchup problem. The wild card is Russell Westbrook. Who's he going to guard? Who's going to guard him? I would have to give the edge. If anyone's going to beat them, I still think it would be Cleveland in the final, because Cleveland has the personnel that they could play. They without Steph, they're going to match up very well with Golden State, in my opinion, especially because they have the ability to go big and slow the tempo down with Tristan Thompson and with Timothy Mozgov.
I'm going to go so far to say, and I know for some folks I'm really going against the grain here, without a 100% Steph Curry, I think that the Warriors would lose to Oklahoma City, the Spurs, or the Cavs.
All three.
I really do.
I'm not going that far.
Without Steph Curry. He's the MVP of the league. He gave you 30 points a night, 7 assists, 6 rebounds. And over the course of 7 games, if you don't have the straw that's stirring your drink on a nightly basis, listen, these guys haven't gone through times of crisis yet. Like they've been able to beat the Rockets off. They're just a better team, better talent, better fundamental just team concepts and the way they play the game. They're going to have an advantage inherently on top of having the better players. But I just don't think over the course of 7 games, playoff crisis. 3 minutes left, 1 possession game without Steph. I just don't see them as I don't view them as the same team. I think they're a world different. I think it's taking LeBron away from Cleveland. Yeah, Kyrie's great and Love's great, but at the same time, you can't take away the MVP. And I have major concerns for the Warriors if they can't get him right sooner than later.
Warriors still the favorite for me by virtue of their resume. I understand that it's not a runaway anymore if Steph is hampered or out more than this, 1 week remaining on that original 2 weeks prognosis is. I do think Oklahoma City could give them a real run for their money. I haven't seen San Antonio really be competitive with them all season, so I don't lean as heavy towards the Spurs. I do think Cleveland could beat them if Steph didn't play. Capital Region Sports Saturday. Brady Farkas, Zach By with you. Special edition, 4 to 6 p.m. Dana White and Conor McGregor in this UFC business. They proved 2 things to me. 1, they both have points, and 2, neither one of them truly gets it. Next.
It's a special edition of Capital Region Sports Saturday. Here are your hosts, Brady Farkas and Zach By.
Conor McGregor wants to fight in UFC 200, doesn't want to promote UFC 200, says he's going to retire. Dana White says that he can fight in UFC 200 if he comes back to promote. Still not going to do it. So Conor McGregor says, again, he wants to fight. He's not retiring. And UFC and Dana White won't let him fight in UFC 200. Zach, I think they both have points, but I don't think either one of them get it. Like, how arrogant can you be? These 2 guys need each other. Like, UFC is still not a mainstream sport. Like, how into UFC are you?
I am a casual observer. You're
not on the Will Brown level?
No. I've never taken $1 out of my pocket to watch a fight. I have watched a couple fights, but it's not something I make a priority. But Conor McGregor changes it for me because he's so polarizing. He pulls me in. I'm clicking on links. I'm watching his interviews. I'm watching his knockouts. He's sort of a game-changing type guy, much like they had with Brock Lesnar, who still has all the record for number of pay-per-view hits. Conor McGregor, for UFC, in terms of UFC, Conor McGregor has that kind of effect on me.
The non-mainstream sports, you need those stars to bring in the casual fan, okay? I don't watch a whole lot of golf. I'll watch on Sunday when Jordan Spieth or Tiger Woods or Ricky Fowler or Phil Mickelson. Yeah. I'll watch that. Yeah. I don't watch a whole lot of tennis, but I'll watch the Grand Slam final when it's Serena Williams, when it's Roger Federer, when it's Novak Djokovic, okay? I'll watch those guys. People that don't watch baseball will stop for Bryce Harper.
No doubt. Yep.
The UFC, even as popular as it is in its niche following, it is still a niche following. Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor, make it better. And it's arrogant of Dana White to think that he doesn't need Conor McGregor on his UFC 200 card.
I'm going to go the other way, and I think that if you're making me choose, Conor McGregor needs Dana White more than Dana White needs Conor McGregor, because at one time Chuck Liddell was the greatest thing, and then John Bones Jones was the greatest thing. Fighters will come and go. One thing from a business perspective that you can't do is not fulfill an obligation that you've already made. You have to show up. That is 1A in terms of just being a professional. And I fully understand what he's trying to say here. I did so much promo. I got away with what put me in this position in the first place. The regiment, the discipline, the training. I totally get it. You have to come to an agreement beforehand. You cannot blow off business. It's the biggest no-no in a public position that you have. And that's something that Vince McMahon in wrestling has always said. We'll deal with anything that comes to the table. Not showing up, that's something that we can't deal with.
Conor McGregor, he even offered, though, to come back for the New York UFC press conference to build that.
Yep.
His tweet that said he was retiring got us talking UFC months out from UFC 200. It got us talking. Like,
unintended consequence.
Like, he does have a point. Like,
oh, no doubt.
So
no doubt.
They're both right, but they're both arrogant. Dana White does need Conor McGregor. He doesn't need him. You know, you're right. The fighters will come and go, but he still needs his stars. He needs Ronda Rousey. He needs Conor McGregor. And Conor McGregor is under contract. He can't just jump ship and go to another fighting organization. If he's not fighting in UFC, he's not fighting anywhere. So, like, you can't afford to alienate your boss that much. Dana White speaking about UFC 200 and this whole Conor McGregor nonsense.
Conor's going to fight again. Conor's going to fight again. He's going to fight at 201, 202. 203, whatever the deal might be. We'll see how this, what's next. But, it is what it is. The show's going to roll on, and Conor will fight again.
And he says the show's going to roll on. That's exactly what will happen. People will order UFC 200. You'll get them back for maybe even a bigger pop for UFC 201. Here's my big thing, going back to the business portion of it. I think Dana White would show a legitimate chink in his armor if he let Conor McGregor get the best of him in this instance. I think it sets a bad precedent moving forward, because eventually 3 years from now, 4 years from now, there's going to be a kid, from Detroit, Michigan, who we don't know his name right now, and he's going to be a star, and he's going to remember that, you know what, I'm the biggest guy in the business. I'm demanding the biggest payroll. I got the biggest checks. I'm the best in the world. No, I'm not doing your promo. And conversely, if Conor McGregor doesn't fight at UFC 200 and Dana White doesn't let him slide on this, that precedent will already be set. Like, there's no other option. I have to show up. And from that business, an employer point of view, I agree with the route that Dana White went. Although it's going to negatively affect the business in the short term, I think in the long term, it's a better look.
They both need each other. I don't disagree with you that if Dana White starts making exceptions to the rule, that it's going to make him and the organization look bad and therefore put you in a vulnerable position. But I would say I would like to see what Conor McGregor or any fighter's contract looks like, because I do want to see what specificities there are about promotion or what rules there are. And if there's not specific rules, very, very specific rules, then there needs to be, look, any card you fight on, you have to do whatever promotion we tell you to. Or you must do X radio hits, X TV shows, and you must appear at the pre-fight press conference, or else you cannot fight. That needs to be in writing. It may be already.
It's a good call. It needs to be clear, because Conor McGregor deserves more leeway than your guy who's opening up the night. If Conor McGregor wants to do less promo and focus more on training, he should be able to come to a predetermined agreement with Dana White. You treat stars differently. That's a fact. That's the way life works. It's not fair. He wants to do less promo. Fine. Come to an agreement ahead of time. Just not showing up. I can't get down with it.
Let's get that in writing. Capital Region Sports Saturday, the special edition. Brady Farkas, Zach By with you right here. 104.5 The Team, 104.5theteam.com. The New York Knicks, Zach, are talking to David Blatt, former Cleveland Cavaliers head coach, who was egregiously pushed out by Cavs ownership and possibly LeBron James mid-season this year. The Knicks are talking to him. Is that a good fit for New York?
I think it is a good fit. I think David Blatt's a good coach. I think he got a total raw deal in Cleveland. Was there for 1 year. They lose Love and Kyrie. They go to the NBA championship. They get off to another great start. David Blatt it has the highest winning percentage in NBA history for any coach that's been fired in the middle of a season. I didn't think it was fair. I think David Blatt is proven. I think if you're just saying, well, he hasn't proved it in the NBA, hasn't proved it in the NBA, I think you need to open up your scope a little bit. This guy is world renowned. He's respected across the globe. And you know what? If your issue is, well, these guys won't, respect him as the coach, I think you have a bigger fundamental issue with kind of players you have. I think it's a great rebuilding thing. The New York Knicks needs to tear that thing down to build it back up again. That's my view. I think if you put Blatt in there, you give him a 5-year deal and try to build around Porzingis. I'm very disappointed. I like when the Knicks are better. Basketball's a better place. The New York Knicks haven't played a meaningful basketball game in what feels like a decade.
You're talking about star power. The NBA is better when Boston, New York, Los Angeles are good. That's just the way it is. And I'm with you. David Blatt, to me, is a good choice. I wanted Scott Brooks. I like the up-tempo style. Maybe you have the chance that he lures in a Kevin Durant or a Russell Westbrook down the line, although I don't bank on that. But I like Scott Brooks. I think he got a raw deal in Oklahoma City. I wasn't in love with Tom Thibodeau, who allegedly wanted to come to New York. Hard nose. I get that, but that seems for more of a true young team. I don't see Carmelo Anthony loving that style. But David Blatt, you talk about the pressure to win in New York. Is there any more pressure than having to coach LeBron James on his return trip to Cleveland when it's truly win now and he's on a 1-year deal because if you don't win now, he can threaten to leave again? Is there any more pressure than that? He signed up to coach Cleveland before LeBron was signed on. And there they had one star, Kyrie Irving, and nothing else. And the Cavaliers ownership thought he could handle a rebuild. That's what you have with the Knicks. You have Carmelo Anthony, you have Kristaps Porzingis, and a whole lot of nothing else. He is a good fit for the New York Knicks. You didn't get Luke Walton, which we'll talk about soon enough. He goes to the Lakers. You didn't get Thibodeau because you didn't want him. He's in Minnesota.
He's in a better spot in Minnesota.
And you didn't get Scott Brooks, who is in Washington.
Yes.
So, and that's a better spot than the Knicks. Also, David Blatt is A, who's left, and B, it's a good move. I agree with that. 104.5 The Team, 104.5theteam.com. Capital Region Sports Saturday, special edition, 4 to 6 p.m. Brady and Zach By here. Zach, I think we both, agree. It's fun. Friday night, couple nights, have a beer or two, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Have you ever bought like a shot or a beer for the guy next to you?
Of course. Well, not a stranger, but yeah, of course. You always buy drinks for your buddies.
Have you ever bought drinks for the entire bar?
I have not.
You came to me this morning, and you were talking to me about Johnny Manziel. Rumor has it he was watching the draft at a bar, and earlier this week, what is he doing now?
300 shots purchased by Johnny Manziel.
Were they all for him?
No, he bought drinks for the entire place, which is indicative to where he's at on a couple different fronts. One, he wants to be everyone's friend, wants to be accepted. He's been dealing with a ton of rejection, and it also just goes to show you I know Manziel comes from money, but and he signed an NFL deal. He is not rich to the point where he can be spending money like this on allegedly as much drugs as he's flying through. He looks like he's on drugs. His muscle material has deteriorated. He looks pale. The pictures of him, he looks. There's a stark contrast of physically how he looked 2 years ago. It's getting to the point where you're scratching your head with this guy and you're wondering, whether you're going to see, a rest in peace tweet. Like, which morning are we going to wake up and Manziel's going to kill himself with a drunk driving? He's going to kill himself with an overdose, or he's just going to, be a lifelong loser, and have addiction issues and squander a chance to go make a living in the National Football League.
We laughed about it initially, but it really is not a laughing matter. I was a guy who was on the Johnny football train in college. He was exciting. He was fresh. He was new. He was a 5'10" quarterback who, for all you hear about quarterbacks who need to be 6'5", he was the little guy. He was the guy that everyone could relate to. and I flashed the money signs too, and I thought it was cool. But Johnny Manziel, this is no longer funny. It's no longer cool.
Not at all.
It truly is just a cautionary tale at this point. He's got pending legal issues, and he's doing this stuff.
He's getting indicted. But here's the thing. Here's the thing we have to remember. Johnny Football, in air quotes, is ending up on the wrong side of all these headlines because his talent doesn't equal his headache off the field. We've seen guys act like this. And
not
guys,
a quarterback, though, for the most part.
Right, for the most part.
Jim McMahon won a Super Bowl. He could get away with it a little bit more.
Right, but in a sense where, like, Michael Irvin was doing all kinds of hard drugs. Michael Irvin stabbed his teammate in the neck with scissors because he cut him in line for a barber chair. We're okay with Ray Lewis, catching a body and then going to play later in the league. Greg Hardy is going to be on a team this year. Read his play-by-play, what he did to his fiance, 2 years ago. This type of wacky stuff that Manziel's going through, the hard drugs, hitting his girlfriend. These other guys have done it, but because he's a 5'10" quarterback that doesn't pop off the page and doesn't have uber, natural raw talents oozing, we're sitting here having a conversation about him because of XYZ, everything unrelated to football.
Cautionary tale at this point, Johnny Manziel. The legal issues aside, hope he gets his life together, and whether that coincides with a return to football, you just want to see a guy who's 23 years old make some better decisions and get his life on track. Capital Region Sports Saturday, brought to you by Mohawk Honda, your #1 volume dealer in the Capital Region. Yankees manager Joe Girardi, he's a little bit salty, Zach. We're going to talk about it next.
It's a special edition of Capital Region Sports Saturday. Here are your hosts, Brady Farkas and Zach Bye.
Yankees manager Joe Girardi says he would ban the use of the shift if he were the commissioner of baseball. Zach, seems to me like a guy who's a little upset that he has a veteran team that has learned how to hit one way and cannot really adjust to the shift. He's got Carlos Beltran. He's got Mark Teixeira. He's got guys who get shifted, and his team hasn't really figured out a way to beat the shift. So it just seems to me a case of, you know what, we can't beat the shift, so let's just get rid of it entirely.
I was going to say it seems a little bit like sour grapes. It's not like his team is going through something.
His team uses it on defense almost more than anybody else.
I was going to say he uses the shift, and it's not like he's going through something on the offensive side of it that other teams aren't experiencing on a night-to-night basis. The Yankees aren't any different here. It's a little bit. Honestly, it sounds a little bit soft, and I'm not talking about fundamentally whether the shift should be in or not. But just from my perspective, and I like Girardi, it sounds a little bit soft. It sounds a little like I'll go to Washington Park at Albany and play basketball. It's a very cutthroat environment, and you don't want to be the guy that complains about a team or complains about the rules because you'll just get shredded. It reminds me of that where you're just kind of like, come on, dude, like what are we talking about here? This is the circumstance that everyone's in. Now whether the shift should actually be banned or not, I'll leave that to a baseball head like yourself. I don't view it as a problem at all. I think it's part of the game. The point is to not let the guy get a hit. So if you can shift everyone over, and that's within the rules, what are we talking about?
The baseball purist in me agrees with you 100%. The baseball purist in me says, you know what? Your goal is to stop. My goal as a pitcher and as a defense is to score more runs than you. If I can limit your opportunities to score, then I'm going to do that. You have every opportunity. If I'm going to move everybody over, then you can go bunt for a hit any time you want to. It's right there for you. You can slap the ball to left field or right field, depending on how the shift is. If you want to, it's there for you. You have an opportunity to beat it. My goal is to limit you from scoring, and any way I can do that, I'm going to do it. If that means I want to play 3 infielders on the second base side of second base, or if I want to play 3 infielders on the shortstop side of second base, then fine. That's how I choose to align the field. I also don't know how you would even legislate it if you did get rid of it. What are you going to do? Put a giant X at short? shortstop and second base and say your fielders have to stand within this giant
put some lines on the field like a volleyball court?
What's the difference? Like, how would you legislate it? You would have to say something it couldn't be, to me, you eliminate the shift, because there is no set spot that you have to stand. It would have to be your shortstop and third baseman have to remain on the left side of the infield. Like, you can shift over and play as close to second base as you want, but you can't cross over. But, Zach, I will say, as much as the baseball purist in me thinks that, it wouldn't shock me if MLB looked at doing this. Why? Because what's the biggest knock on baseball? It's slow moving. It's boring. There's not enough offense.
Yep.
And the offensive numbers have gone down for whatever reason. The implement of the shift, the takeaway of steroids, whatever it is, the offenses have gone down. 4.25 runs a game this year. So we've seen leagues do things. I was just
gonna say, you and I had this conversation off the air, and I think it's a good point, and I think it's worth mentioning that you've seen the game of basketball to get a higher number offensively and to make it more appealing for the neutral fan, make it up and down. You want to see the ball go through the hoop, so you can't just like camp out in the lane.
Yeah, defensive 3 seconds.
And prevent a guy from coming in. So they fundamentally say, hey, there's an allotted time. You got 3 seconds.
You can't play zone in the NBA.
At hockey, they kind of had the same conversation where they wanted to make it more offensive. So you have, lower numbers in overtime, creates more space. That makes more offense. So in terms of that, fundamentally, I could see why you would entertain the idea, because ultimately it's a business and you want to make it more appealing to fans. And honestly, baseball, and I'm not knocking, the sport, I grew up playing it. It has an air of that associated with it that, as you said from the outset, it's categorized as slow moving and not as offensive, especially from what we watched in the 1990s and early 2000s.
Again, what we've seen in the NFL is, why is everything in the defensive backfield called a penalty? So that offenses have an easier opportunity to score.
I'll say football's another great example of how they've tweaked the rules fundamentally to make it more offensive. And once you get over it and get used to how the game is being played, that's just how you just accept it and move on. Whether baseball makes that move or not, that remains to be seen.
So look, I think we'd agree. You love watching basketball most, I would bet, right?
Basketball and football are right there for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basketball. Would you watch it no matter what, or does 88-74 appeal to you as much as 128 to 125?
I would probably watch it just as much.
Okay.
I believe that.
Is football more appealing to you at 31-28 or 6-3?
Oh man, you know what?
Because I sat and watched every pitch of Mariners Royals last night. It was 1-0, and to me, great game. But a lot of other people would rather watch 10-8.
I think just for the neutral fan, knee-jerk, face value, I want the more offense. But that being said, I used to, a couple of years back when Alabama and LSU were number 1 and number 2.
13-9.
13-9, 6-3. I love those games just as much. I think that if you truly love the sport, you're going to watch. Things get tinkered with, but once you move on from it. Like, people are outraged at the extra point, but once you move on from it, 10 years from now, we won't even remember that they said. We're going to ask ourselves, why would they kick it from the 5? Say they go off the deep end here and eliminate the kickoff. Another 20 years from now, it's still going to be football, and I think your people are still going to watch.
The only thing I'll say is this: the complaints on baseball are, 1, it takes too long, and B, it's not enough offense. I tell you what, you're not getting one without the other. If you take away the shifts and you get more offense, I tell you what, a 10-8 game moves a whole lot slower than a 1-0 game does. Capital Region Sports Saturday Special Edition. Brady Farkas, Zach By with you until 6 p.m. Zach, NFL Draft Day 3 started at noon today. Days 1 and 2 provided a lot of drama, and for New York Jet fans, I don't quite know what you're doing.
With the 51st pick in the 2016 NFL Draft, the New York Jets select quarterback Christian Hackenberg, Penn State.
So the Jets take Christian Hackenberg in the second round. Zach, I want to just lambaste the Jets right now. Please tell me I'm wrong.
No, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. I've watched Christian Hackenberg play as much as any quarterback in college football for the last 4 years, and I have not been impressed. His freshman season, there were some real bright spots. Since then, completely fell off a cliff. And you can't tell me that a coaching change is accounting for you completing 52% of your passes at the college level.
Yeah.
He is wildly inaccurate, and just on the eye test. Not good. Didn't make his team better. But the further you dig into the accuracy numbers with Christian Hackenberg, it gets even more discouraging. I have something written down here from Pro Football Focus that I want to share with you. It says this season his completion percentage, when adjusted for drops, spikes, etc., was 64%, which is 120th in the nation.
Out of like 122?
I was going to say there's like 145, something like that.
I think it's less than that.
FBS, it may even be less. So I'm not sold on Christian Hackenberg. I think they're making a fatal mistake in not paying Ryan Fitzpatrick. You won 10 games this past year. Fitzpatrick was terrific, 60% completion, threw for almost 4,000 yards, 2-to-1 touchdown int ratio, and the most important position on the field, and you're not willing to pay the guy. I'm just the Jets. I'm scratching my head.
Christian Hackenberg is a guy who is the all-time leader in passing yards at Penn State. He did help take Penn State from the depths of the Joe Paterno and Jerry Sandusky scandal. So I give him plenty of props for that. He was first team. He was Big Ten All-Rookie team as a freshman. He was a freshman All-American as a freshman at Penn State. But as you alluded to, he then in his second year went 12 touchdowns, 15 picks. Then he went 16-6, so better on the ratio this year. But still not all that impressive for a guy playing at a major conference. And to me, the thing I can't get past is the Jets are aging. They're built to win now. Brandon Marshall, Eric Decker, Muhammad Wilkerson.
I don't get it.
Darrell Revis. You're built to win now, so you go spend your second-round pick on the future. And by the way, you've already got your project quarterback on the roster in Bryce Petty. So either you made a colossal mistake in drafting Bryce Petty last year when you could have had a fourth-round pick that helped you get to the playoffs, or you made a colossal mistake this year in taking a second-round pick on a quarterback, because now you have Geno Smith, you have Bryce Petty, and you have Christian Hackenberg. You have two quarterbacks that aren't ready to play. You have a third that nobody wants to see play. And if you really need a stopgap quarterback and you're not going to pay Fitz, go get Brian Hoyer, Sam Bradford, or Mike Glennon from Tampa Bay. All three would be better options than what the Jets did in the second round. They have bigger needs than a rookie quarterback. Go get Fitz or go get one of the guys that I just named, because you need help along the defensive line. You need help at linebacker. They did pick up two linebackers in rounds 1 and 3. You need help at defensive back. You have other need. You have a 31-year-old running back. You have other needs.
I just think they missed the memo on how important that position is. And when you're that close, like if you took every quarterback in the league and you cut them in half, so you have the top 16. Fitzy was in that top 16 this past year, and when you're as close as them, you can get over the hump with a guy like Fitz. Started every game, terrific production. I think they missed the boat on this one.
Love Darren Lee in the first round. Do not like Christian Hackenberg in the second. Capital Region Sports Saturday special edition. Brady Farkas, Zach By with you until 6 p.m. Andrew Platek, it's a name you remember, played at Gilderland High School, moved on to prep school. Well, he might be making his return on a big stage. We're going to hear more from Clint Jackson, Rivals.com, next.
It's a special edition of Capital Region Sports Saturday. Here are your hosts, Brady Farkas and Zach By.
On the phone, Clint Jackson, Rivals.com. Clint, Andrew Platek, a guy who played at Gilderland High School, led the Dutchman to the Class AA final as a junior. He left the Capital Region, went to prep school, and now he's got an offer this week from North Carolina and head coach Roy Williams. Where did that come from?
I'll tell you what, it goes to show you a lot when you have a kid that size who can shoot the ball as well as he can, you know, that the high majors are willing to look at kids like that, because oftentimes a lot of these high major schools like North Carolina, they lose games to schools like Butler, and all the fans are on the board saying, you know, why can't we get some kids like that? Well, here's a kid like that.
Well, it's interesting because I actually heard Platek visited Butler as well, so it kind of speaks to what you're saying here. Clint, let me ask you a question. We know how good of a shooter that Andrew Platek is. That is his 1A skill set. What else does he bring to the table that has convinced Roy Williams that he could play for the Tar Heels?
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, I think he's got a few of them. One, he's very crafty. He's very tough. You know, he's got good size. He's 6'4", 6'4.5" for a shooting guard. And he embraces defending the other team's best player. So he's not a one-trick pony. I think that's what the UNC staff really likes about him.
Clint, you haven't seen Andrew play yet this year on the EYBL circuit, but you did see him play last year. You're going to see him play in about the next 2 weeks as the EYBL circuit comes to your neighborhood in Virginia. What did you see from him last year that he needs to improve on that you're hoping to see that he has improved on this year?
Well, that's a good question. Last year I watched him because, we had all the Kevin Herter mania, and I was part of that because I loved that kid. And, while I was watching Herter, there was the other kid out there who I was like, well, that kid's pretty good, too. He was a year behind Kevin. But, we saw a guy that had good size and he could shoot. And actually, on where the running started, he could get above the rim. I think just, being keyed on, when you're about the fifth or sixth best player on a team, and I'm not saying he was, but when you're not keyed on, it's easier to go off. When you are keyed on and the other team is focused on stopping you, how well do you play, under that, that scenario? So I think that's what I really look for this year. But, everybody loves him. He's shooting 54% from three-point range. And when you put a kid like that, and I'm not saying he, if he were to play at Carolina or Indiana or somewhere, that he would be a star, but I do see him as a 4-year program player. And if you surround him with the right pieces, being guys who can penetrate and kick and, big men who can score, and you leave a guy like that in space, he can kill you.
Clint, another question I have, it's kind of, begging here. How does a 19-year-old kid say no to Roy Williams and going to play at North Carolina?
A lot of them have, but again, a lot of them have, committed to UNC. But I think that, the one thing I noticed when talking to Andrew or interviewing him or hearing an interview with someone else is there's definitely a lot of, he's very fond of the program. He gets excited. There's a lot of kids out there that we interview them. They just give you the canned answers, the media speak. This kid doesn't hide his emotions about UNC. It's a big offer for him. It's a very big deal. So, I think, one thing I take away from him is academics is going to be a really big part of this equation for him, and also seeing how he fits in with a guy. So I do see UNC having an excellent chance with Platek if they were to push and, keep pushing and try to get him on campus. But, I think he's really going to be careful with his decision and make sure it's not an emotional one.
Capital Region Sports Saturday. Brady Farkas and Zach By sitting in here and on the phone with Clint Jackson of Rivals.com. Knows everything there is to know about college basketball recruiting, especially when it comes to the ACC. And Clint, when I last saw Andrew Platek, he was a guy who really didn't like to go to the hoop. Zach and I were saying that he reminds us of J.J. Redick early in his college career, a guy who really didn't like to dribble in the lane and create contact and get to the rim. Do you see him in the J.J. Redick mold in his college career? Are coaches going to want to see him go to the hoop more? Or is he going to be a guy who just relies on the athletes around him to penetrate, and then he can stand on the perimeter and receive passes and shoot?
I mean, he could be. I mean, right now I agree 100% with you guys. He's definitely a guy who doesn't like to take it to the hole because he's not as quick as some other guys. So, I don't think you'll ever see him reach 5-star status with Rivals.com, but, he's probably a legitimate 4-star kid. Eric Boffey would probably be better to answer that question than I do because he does the national rankings. But, he could be a specialist at the next level being a shooter. But I do think that by continuing to hone his handle, get as quick as he can, as lean as he can so he can move his speed a little better, he'll get people to respect him so that they do sag off of him. And when they do sag off of him, his jumper is just money.
Clint Jackson, Rivals.com. You talked about Kevin Herter. You said you loved him. I remember talking to you about him 1 year ago. He ends up at Maryland. Were you surprised that he didn't get an offer from a Duke or from a UNC?
I think I do know UNC watched him. I don't think Duke was in the market for another kid at that position because they had a couple other kids coming in. But, UNC did look at him. I don't know if he played extremely well in front of the UNC staff, but, I think if they had got to see him maybe one more time, they probably would have saw what I saw with Kevin Herter. But, obviously some other schools did see it, and they moved quicker, and they got him on campus. And, Maryland won his heart. So, he ended up going there, and I think it's a really good fit for him.
Clint Jackson, Rivals.com. We're going to be monitoring this Andrew Platek to North Carolina possibility throughout the next weeks and months if it materializes to be that long and drawn out of a recruiting process. Clint, we appreciate the time. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, guys.
There he goes, Clint Jackson, Rivals.com. Love talking to him because he's just so in tune, Zach, with the ACC-specific recruiting scene. He was all over Kevin Herter last year when he was getting looks from places like Notre Dame, and now he's on Andrew Platek. And even though Platek didn't play this year at Guilderland, he's still a Capital Region guy. Oh, yeah. This is pretty cool stuff for the Capital Region.
Yeah, it is. And I don't think that unless you're fully paying attention, I don't think that a lot of folks around the capital region realize what type of hotbed this is for basketball. I mean, boys high school basketball. And I remember Jimmy Patzel's from Siena, like when he moved up here from Maryland, he's like, wait, you guys put boys high school basketball on the front page of your sports sections? I thought that was pretty telling and pretty cool. But like you look at right now, you got Hermir Wright at Albany Academy, who's getting recruited at the highest level.
Villanova, Cincinnati.
Right? You got Andrew Platek, who's been offered by Miami, visited Butler, now offered by Roy Williams at UNC. You got Joe Girard at Glens Falls, who's going to end up probably playing at a major college basketball school.
He's probably going to break the all-time, if he stays in Section 2 all 4 years and stays healthy, he's probably going to break Lance Stevenson's all-time New York State scoring record.
I was going to say, he may break the Section 2 record before his junior season's done. That kid is playing at an incredible clip and putting it in at an incredible clip. And then you have Kevin Herder, who's, again, playing at the highest level. And then graduating last year, you had Joe Cremo, who's probably a top 10 most accomplished player we've ever had in this area. The back-to-back undefeated run, state championship, New York State Player of the Year. And it's funny because once in a while, like, you'll hear, like, an older guy be like, I got this guy that I'm friends with on Facebook, and he's a good guy, face to face, but he's one of these guys that gets behind a keyboard and he's just like a different person. And he's like, back when I was playing, the competition was just at like a higher level. I'm like, no, dude, no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. This Section 2 high school basketball in the last number of years has been just terrific. Last season, there was 12 players playing in Section 2 that the following year or eventually would receive full scholarships to play basketball in college. And it's pretty cool to have some of these type of players right here in your backyard.
Absolutely. But look, we all do that to some degree. Don't tell me that you weren't a freshman in college and went back to Scotia and you didn't say, guys were better last year. Don't tell me you weren't that guy, too.
When I went back, there was an NBA player in my high school conference in Jimmer Fredette, so I don't think I was able to have the liberty to say that. And you have a tendency to, but it's sort of like revisionist history. In your mind, it's at a higher level because you're out there and you hold your own ability in high regard. But I'll tell you what, man, I had a chance to do the semifinals for Time Warner Cable Sports Channel, the boys tournament, and it was. I mean, these guys that are playing around here right now are terrific, and they deserve their due credit. And the last thing I want to hear is someone on my Facebook wall telling me how it was better in 1997. You should have been there. Like, all right, dude, it's pretty good right now.
Let's say this: the revisionist history is there for everybody, and sometimes those revisionists get lucky in that there is a lull. Sometimes that's it. There are sometimes
there is.
It does ebb and flow. I know when I played, it was Taylor Battle, it was Jimmer Fredette, it was Alex St. Pierre, it was Brad
Joe
Sheehan.
Bova, yeah. Oh my God, Andy Robinson.
It was all those guys. And then there was a little bit of an ebb, a little bit of a flow.
There was
and now
a little
it's back
dip
again.
Yeah. It's fun, man. We're lucky. We're in a great area for high school sports.
It's Capital Region Sports Saturday. Brady and Zach in here until 6 p.m. The Yankees, should they give up on Luis Severino in their starting rotation? It's just April. That's coming up next
on 104.5 The Team.
It's your home for Yankees baseball, 104.5 The Team. Yankees take on the Red Sox tonight. We've got coverage for you starting at 6:30. Yankees in Fenway. The Yankees lose again last night, Zach. And Luis Severino, he didn't pitch last night, but he got rocked in Texas earlier this week. He's 0-3. He's a 6.86 ERA. He's only 22 years old. So Joe Girardi and the Yankees are in a very precarious position with him. Do you drop Severino out of the starting rotation after this bad April, or do you attribute these struggles to, look, this is growing pains, and this is what happens to young pitchers?
I certainly wouldn't drop him out of the rotation. You never know what type of mental fragility you're dealing with a 22-year-old. And if you bring them down to the minors, I don't know if you can measure the impact. It may work, and he may retool some things and come back, but I think you let him try to work through. It's still relatively early in the season. It's not like he's the one thing that's holding you back from success right now.
No, that would be the offense.
I was going to say the Yankees haven't been able to hit the baseball, but I think you keep on putting him out there. He's too good of a raw talent, I believe, to demote at this stage in the game. Give it another month. If we're still having this conversation, then I think you really think about it.
Look, he was good enough for you to bring up last season as a 21-year-old in the midst of a playoff race.
He was so good last year.
And he was so good last year. And now, look, he's 22 years old. It's April. I mean, look at the weather that you pitch in just in April anywhere, okay? The Yankees have played Houston when it was freezing. They played at Detroit when it was freezing. They played Seattle and it was cold on a Friday night when he pitched. You don't pitch in ideal weather. I know the results haven't been there. And here's the thing. One, with the instant gratification society, and two, with the Yankee fans. Yankee fans, this is a new way. It's no longer just go out and buy the established player and buy the championship. You blame the Yankees for not having a farm system, for not bringing players along like they did with Derek Jeter and Andy Pettitte and Bernie Williams and Jorge Posada, but yet you forget what it's like to go through those pains as those people grow up. Don't you forget, Mariano Rivera came up as a starter, got moved to the bullpen because he was getting hit so hard as a starting pitcher. Luis Severino has thrown 1 month this season, 1 month's worth of starts, 22 years old. Like, I'm sorry, Zach, but I don't have sympathy for Yankee fans in this, because this is what rebuilding looks like. This is what culture and philosophy change looks like. If you don't want to just go out and overpay for everybody and you want to develop talent, you deal with this for a little while.
Yeah, I think he's too good, and I think this will work itself out. And you look at other major league pitchers who are now fully established or even retired that struggled earlier in their career, their first year, their second year, and you can point to other sports as well. You don't demote. I think you continue to ride this thing out and see what happens.
Felix Hernandez is a guy who's a Cy Young winner, who's a surefire Hall of Famer. His first full season, how about 12-14 with a 4.52 ERA? Greg Maddux he just got inducted into the Hall of Fame, 300 wins, one of the best pitchers of all time. How about 6-14 with a 5.61 ERA in his first full season? I know that there are Justin Verlanders and Pedro Martinez's and Doc Goodens who dominated right off the rip, but that's not the norm, okay? That is not the norm. You aren't supposed to just be able to come into the major leagues at 22 and dominate. Mike Trout came up, in like July of his first season and hit in the ones. I mean, that's just how this goes, and Yankee fans have forgotten what it's like to develop talent. 104.5 The Team and 104.5theteam.com. Brady and Zach here until 6 o'clock. Zach, you're a Laker fan, right? Are you just a Kobe fan, or are you a Laker fan?
No. I'm a Laker fan, although this next chapter of my fanhood in my adult life, there's a lot of question marks around it, because the time that I fell in love with the game was the same year that Kobe came over from Charlotte in the draft, and Shaq came from the Magic. I was a big Shaq fan in Orlando. He came over, and I just kind of fell in love with the game. And my whole life. Did you watch
the 30 for 30 on?
No, I was working, and I haven't got a chance to watch it. I watched a 15-minute clip at the end, great. And it was awesome.
The director of that is a Capital Region.
I know. I heard her do the interview
with Levack and Wolf.
Yeah.
But so that was great. That was this magic moment. It was awesome. 30 for 30.
But hold on. But I know we're about to get in the Luke Walton thing, but like, this is like a curious spot in my life. Like, it's almost like a Yankee fan who grew up with Jeter, and then there's this era without him, and you're kind of like rediscovering, like, wait, am I really a Laker fan, or was I just like in love with Kobe Bryant and the pieces around him? I'm trying to figure that out. I'm in that process.
So you're trying to figure out if you're really a Laker fan or just a basketball fan who loved Kobe.
That's what I'm saying.
Here's my question for you right then. If Kobe Bryant had gotten traded anywhere, would you have become a fan of that team? That tells you.
Dude, that is a great question.
Are you the fan of the team or of the player?
That's a great question. Thankfully, I never had to make that decision. This reminds me of a conversation I used to have with my dad. Like, he didn't like watching the NBA anymore. I'm like, how come you don't like watching the NBA? You said you loved basketball growing up. And he said, after Magic Johnson and Larry Bird retired, the game just wasn't the same for me. I couldn't pretend that I was as interested in my later years without those guys that were the building blocks of my original fanhood. And that's kind of where I'm at. I love the game. I just don't know, if you'll see me, ranting about the Lakers like I have the past, 18 years.
It is tough. My brother is a diehard, he was a Yankee fan when he was like 4 years old. Okay, loved Alfonso Soriano. So then he followed Alfonso Soriano to the Nationals, and he followed him to Texas. And then eventually, when he got to be like 12 and Soriano was gone from Texas, he stuck with Texas and said, okay, Texas is my team, but Soriano will be my favorite player. But he floated around with Soriano for the first couple of years of his life. For me, I'm a Seattle Mariners fan, and Ken Griffey Jr. is my favorite athlete of all time. And there was like a period when I was like 9 where I was like, I'm not a Cincinnati Reds fan, but like I'm following the Reds a little more because Griffey's there. But then that lasted about 2 years, and it's just all Mariners for me. It doesn't matter. The only thing with me that's going to change it, and we've had this debate. Now we're off topic, but whatever. It's a great topic.
Yeah.
If your favorite team moves,
dude,
if they leave,
so brutal, man.
That is I'll tell you this. The NBA is third on my totem pole of the NFL and baseball in the NFL. I don't hate the Oklahoma City Thunder. I do like Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook, but I will not root for the Thunder because they're not the Sonics. If the Sonics moved to a different place and were still the Sonics, maybe I can get on board with it. But when you change the color scheme, you change the name.
That's a fundamental change.
That's not the same. I mean, my dad doesn't love the NFL anymore because he's from Cleveland, and the Browns, like the Ravens, are not the Browns,
right?
So he cannot root for the Ravens and will not watch the Ravens if they're on TV because they're not the Browns.
This is so funny because sports, we hold them so near and dear, and especially if you're like us and you grow up passionate about them, and there's almost like this like relation to them, almost like they're in your family. Like, I've never met a member of the Buffalo Bills, but the Buffalo Bills can ruin a day of the week for me, So when like a sports franchise moves, I can't imagine what type of hole that leaves you with, because like if you're actually passionate about sports, there's got to be a real hole there for you.
There you go.
And I wish that upon no one.
Let me ask you this: Buffalo Bills moved to Toronto, and they're called the Toronto Bills.
Oh my God!
Same color scheme, same jerseys, but Toronto's in front, not Buffalo. Are you still a fan?
I don't even know what I would do, because I'm passionate about the city of Buffalo itself. My whole family's from there. This was just a Navy stop along the way for my father, which is why we ended up here. Oh my God, I'd be so upset. I don't really know what I would do. There'd be some real vitriol from this end. And I'm sure that, I would want to root for a team, so I'd probably end up rooting for them.
But it wouldn't be the same.
It would not even be close. I hate when the Bills play home games in Toronto. It's a joke.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know what I would do. I don't even want to think about it.
It's tough for me because, like I said, you know what? I love the city of Seattle. So if the Seattle Supersonics were playing in Las Vegas, and they were just the Las Vegas Supersonics with the same jerseys, I wouldn't hate them, but it would not be the same. But when you go to Oklahoma City and you change color schemes and you change jerseys and everything's different, now I'm really not on board, okay? If the Seattle Mariners were no longer the Seattle Mariners and they moved to Mississippi, and changed up everything, they would cease to be the Mariners to me.
This is so funny because I actually just heard this past week on another show that the NBA viewership in Seattle is one of the lowest in the country. That the folks of Seattle still haven't been able to get over it and engage with the product.
Bennett's a liar.
It's one of those things where it's so unfortunate for the city, and they were so passionate about that team, and they had great teams on top of it. It wasn't like they were a doormat. Like, they were playing in the NBA Finals just a couple years. What were they in there? They were in there in 1996 against the Bulls, six games. And then a couple of years later, you're not there. Even after having some of the great players in NBA history, in Sean Kemp and Gary Payton, and George Karl coaching those guys, Ray Allen, and then Kevin Durant being drafted by them. That has to make it so much worse, because you see
this success in Oklahoma City should be
that's
in
what
Seattle.
That's what I'm saying. And plus, when you have a alpha Hall of Famer, scoring champion, first ballot guy come in, and then he's ushered right out of town once he unpacks his suitcases, that's just that sucks.
This is your homework for the weekend. 1, this magic moment. 2, go on YouTube. Watch Sonics Gate. It's the story of how the Sonics were stolen from Seattle by Clay Bennett. I've watched it 4 times. It's powerful every time.
I'm on it.
So, 104.5 The Team, 104.5theteam.com. Brady and Zach with you until 6 p.m. Now that we've gotten totally off topic, I promise, Luke Walton's going to coach the Lakers. We're going to break it down next.
It's a special edition of Capital Region Sports Saturday. Here are your hosts, Brady Farkas and Zach Bye.
Luke Walton's going to coach the Los Angeles Lakers after spending time, on the greatest staff of all time in Golden State as the interim head coach. Went 39-4 when Steve Kerr was out. As an assistant coach, helped the Warriors to a championship last year. I get why the Lakers want Luke Walton. Star power, take him away from your conference rival. I even get to some degree why Luke Walton wants to go to Los Angeles. He's a West Coast guy. He played for the Lakers. He played at Arizona. But from a basketball standpoint, Zach, this makes zero sense to me.
Don't say zero.
It makes zero sense.
Don't speak in absolutes.
Nah, look, what is good about that job?
Well, I'll tell you. One, you're coaching the most historic franchise that the sport has to offer. So that unto itself, I think, is a big notch for him. And he alluded to that, like how many times do you have a chance to coach the Los Angeles Lakers? So that in itself is great. Here's another thing. You're entering a new era. Kobe's now gone for the first time in basically 20 years, right? You have a ton of money now freed up. You have three bright young stars. Jordan Clarkson, who was a steal in the draft from Missouri last year. You have D'Angelo Russell, and then you have Julius Randle, who are all really bright spots and nice young pieces to build around a free agent. Al Horford, Kevin Durant, whoever
Russell Westbrook
happens to be, Russell Westbrook. They're going to get someone.
DeMar DeRozan is a name I've heard.
DeMar DeRozan is another name. We've been kind of waiting for this Kobe thing to end. Now it is concluded. And the Lakers, here's another positive thing. The Lakers haven't been able to get anyone in free agency or get anything right basketball-wise in a couple years. They finally got the hot coach who chose to come to Los Angeles. And I think Luke Walton is the type of coach that free agents will want to play for. I think this is the first domino, and I'm not saying next year they're going to be competitive right away, but I think this is the first domino to fall for the Lakers that spurs a little bit of a resurgence here in the next couple of years.
Here's what we know about Luke Walton. We know he's a good coach with an already established team. He took over a championship team this year.
Yep.
How is he with a total rebuild? How is he with super young players and not the, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green? Not only have they been in the league for a few years, they went to college also. You're dealing with 1 year of college and 1 year of the pros of D'Angelo Russell. You're same thing for Randall, who pretty much missed his entire rookie season.
Yep.
How is he developing a total rebuild? Also, now your goal is to win a championship. Who do you have to go through? You have to go through Golden State. So you're going to leave Golden State and go right into now trying to beat Golden State. You've still got San Antonio with Kawhi Leonard. The West is still better than the East.
Are you telling me, you personally, say you're the coach, you're the assistant coach of the Golden State Warriors, Brady Farkas, you're Steve Kerr's assistant coach. You have an opportunity to come back, say they go win the title this year, okay? You have a choice to make. Should you try to stay as an assistant coach for a third consecutive year and go for a third title when you've already accomplished what the most you can as a 1A assistant? You won the title. You even had a chance to steer the ship for more than half the season, coach the All-Star game, whatever. Or go coach the Lakers, a rebuild where there's really not a lot of pressure to win right away. I think you would choose the Lakers job. I believe you would. Are you telling me you'd stay in Golden State for another season?
I would choose to be a head coach over being an assistant under those scenarios. But I'm also telling you, Washington was a better job with John Wall and Bradley Beal. In the weaker Eastern Conference, you had a better chance to win. I'm telling you, Minnesota was a better job. If you're talking about having young stars that have an opportunity to win, you're a lot closer in Minnesota than you are in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I totally agree. But yes, that job is no longer available. Wizards job, no longer available. Those two coaches are no longer available. The Lakers,
only job that's worse is the Knicks.
Right. That's the kind implied truth.
And
we call
anything
that.
to do with the Sixers, if it was open.
Right. But I think this is a good move. I think if we fast forward 500 days, another year, and then into the offseason when all these guys would become free agents. You got the new money market with the new TV deal, all the money that's freed up from Kobe, all the free agents that are on the horizon that are set to become unrestricted. Man, I'll tell you what. As much as we talk about small markets and the bigger markets don't matter anymore, there still is something to living in Los Angeles, California. There is still something to playing for the Lakers. And when you have a hot young coach that players want to play for. He is the Western Conference's version of Brad Stevens, I think, right now. Now, obviously, Stevens is much more accomplished and arguably is a top 3 coach in the league right now. I think Luke Walton has that kind of luster right now, and I think the Lakers, just like that, overnight, are trending back upward.
I get it. 1, you want to be a head coach. 2, the Lakers mystique. 3, you're a West Coast guy, played at Arizona, played with the Lakers. I do understand it, but I tell you what, the job I wanted, if I want to be a head coach, is the Washington job. Eastern Conference, it's weaker. John Wall,
they
Bradley
were so
Beal.
bad this year.
Maybe you're able to
They were like 20 games below their over-under win total. They were so bad.
Maybe you're able to lure Kevin Durant back home to the D.C. area, and then you've got John Wall, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal. You've got instantly among the best 3 backcourts in the entire league. There's a better job out there than the Lakers. Capital Region Sports Saturday special edition, 4 to 6 p.m. Brady Farkas, Zach By, taking you up until the top of the hour. Last night, Zach, Adam Conley for the Miami Marlins was throwing a no-hitter into the 8th inning. Skipper Don Mattingly took him out of that game after 116 pitches.
The 1-2 pitch is in the air, right center field, over Ozuna, and he makes the catch. A couple steps short of the warning track, 2 down. And now here comes Don Mattingly. And that may be it. Adam Conley is going to be done after 7 2/3 no-hit innings tonight in Milwaukee, 116 pitches.
Brewer fans booing Don Mattingly for taking out Adam Conley, who's no-hitting their team. Right. Everybody wants to see the no-hitter. Zach, are you pulling your pitcher in that scenario?
100%. 100%.
He's done.
You cannot. You're
not letting him go for it.
No, I'm not. You can't take out a magnifying glass and get too overwhelmed with one game, especially in baseball. Those Brewer fans are booing because they know that one game in the scope of an entire season, like baseball plays so many games, you lose a game, that's not even 1% of your schedule, and you don't want to become too over-obsessed with winning one game. He's already put you in a great position to win that game. You jeopardize him. You see what he's bringing to the table. You jeopardize him continuing to bring that if you just try to wear his arm out. We haven't even heard of Johan Santana since his no-hitter. That's kind of a cautionary tale in my book. Preserve the athlete. And I think in the long term, the athlete will thank you.
Look, I want the no-hitter as bad as anybody. If I'm Adam Conley, I want the opportunity to go for the no-hitter. If I have a chance at a no-hitter and I'm going to lose it, I'm going to lose it because of me. I'm not going to put it in the hands of a reliever. Now, I do understand in today's pitch count watching culture and in the era of the major salary, even though Adam Conley doesn't have a Clayton Kershaw type contract, that you need to be extra careful because it's not a player, it's an investment.
That's exactly right.
It's a $200 million. Clayton Kershaw is a $200 million investment for the Dodgers. And just because a player makes $500,000 doesn't mean that he's not important in that same way monetarily to you either. Look, 116 pitches. You talk about 120 pitch outings. There were only 40 of them all of last season, less than 1% of all starts last year where a pitcher threw 120 pitches or more. And only one of those came in April last year. So you talk about early season, especially pitch counts. This guy's 26 years old. It's only his second season in the big leagues. I get it. I understand it from Don Mattingly's perspective. I get it from the Marlins management perspective. If I'm Adam Conley, I am ticked, but I do understand it. He did make the right call.
Yeah, I think perspective is huge with this one, and I totally agree with you, bro. If I'm the one pitching, I'm like, let me have this piece of history. That's what I'm saying. You're like, hey, let me have this piece of history. But I think in time he'll appreciate what was done for him. You never know what your ramifications of your decisions are. And if you can dodge a bullet that you see coming, you dodge it. And I know this is not a perfect analogy, but what just came to my mind as we're having this conversation is Derrick Rose. They're in a playoff game a couple of years ago against the Sixers. They have a decisive lead. There's 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Everything was done up until that point to win the game. Great job, great effort. D. Rose tears his knee. He's never the same since. If you can avoid things like that, and again, not a perfect analogy, but if you can avoid things like that, I think that you do.
I tell you what I would have done. It was 5-0 at the time when he got taken out. Throw it up underhand if you want, but at least if he's going to give up
the
a
old
hit,
Rookie of the Year,
let him.
The old Henry Rolling Gardner.
I haven't seen a floater pitch like that since Toby McGee.
I got to tell you this quick story.
Hot ice.
I got to tell you this quick story. I went to a Yankee game in 2008. Oakland against the Yankees, and I went there on a school trip, right? I paid $20, got a ride there, ride back. I'm sitting in the stands, and this girl in front of me makes a joke during the game about Henry Rolling Gardner and goes, garden hoser or whatever,
Run back out.
Run back out.
Gone in.
So I start laughing. She turns around. She sees that she's making me laugh, so she keeps on making Rookie of the Year jokes, right? Keeps me laughing. I hang out with the girl that night, and 7 years later, married her.
I was going to say, we don't need to hear about that night.
No.
The got married part.
I literally ended up marrying my wife, Ashley, and our first engagement was her joking around, giving one-liners from Rookie of the Year at that Yankee game. Pretty funny.
That's how easy it is to get to find your soulmate, folks. Drop sports references and see who's listening. This PSA brought to you by Zach by Love Chat Hotline as well. Capital Region Sports Saturday. Brady Farkas, Zach by. We are here with you up until 6 o'clock. Zach, we've got about a minute here until we've got a break. Albany lacrosse, number 5 in the nation right now, right?
Yeah, it's unbelievable what
are
Scott
they that?
They are. Okay. They're not 5 by circumstance. They went a week ago and beat Yale, who was number 1 in the country a week before that. 2 years ago, they beat Loyola, who was number 1. It's unbelievable, and they have 2 players in Connor Fields and Blaze Reardon that are up for Player of the Year awards. This is the 4th consecutive year an Albany lacrosse player is up for as a finalist for Player of the Year. And I know lacrosse isn't this huge spectator sport, but to put it in terms of say football, for instance, that'd be like Albany having 4 players up for the Heisman in 4 consecutive years. And they've actually had National Player of the Years. They're a top 5 program, and I've got to delve into their program for doing their games on Time Warner Cable Sports Channel. And I'll tell you what, if you like lacrosse, I mean, it is being played at the highest level in the country right on Western Avenue. It's pretty cool.
The thing I was wondering was, again, I asked you, were they that good, or have other teams around them just faltered? Because, look, Virginia is not even ranked. Syracuse, UAlbany is ranked higher than North Carolina, and Duke as well. UAlbany is ranked higher than. So I wonder, are they that good? Could it be possible for them to be that good without a Thompson on the team? Or have others just
it's
faltered?
True. They have All-Americans on their team again. And
Seth Oaks, you didn't mention him. He's incredible also.
Seth Oaks was another terrific player. I mean, these guys, Scott Marr really has it going, and the university and the surrounding community that comes out to see it is very lucky, because 10 years ago, 15 years ago, UAlbany lacrosse wasn't even on the radar, and now here they are being talked about. I mean, they have a player who's in Connor Fields, who is the National Player of the Week from Inside Lacrosse Magazine this week in Connor Fields. It's pretty cool. Again, I know lacrosse doesn't, get the needle nationally slamming, but it's a growing sport, and it has national TV contracts now with ESPN. It's more popular than ever, and Scott Marr has it going at UAlbany.
Brady Farkas, Zach By, Capital Region Sports Saturday special edition here, 4 to 6 p.m. here. So we're taking you up until the top of the hour. Zach, social media, it may have ruined one guy's draft night, but it's pretty much made our draft weekend. That's coming up next.
I'm 104.5 The Team.
It's a special edition of Capital Region Sports Saturday. Here are your hosts, Brady Farkas and Zach By.
Media has taken over the NFL draft weekend. For Laramie Tunzel, the offensive lineman from Ole Miss, it pretty much ruined his draft day because minutes before the draft starts, the picture of him smoking marijuana out of a gas mask, comes to fruition and probably drops him in the draft and costs him millions of dollars. Then you have his hacked text messages, which isn't social media, but it is, digital communication.
And it was posted on Instagram.
Again, yeah. So his social media pretty much ruined Laramie Tunsil's day. But for you and I, we can't go away from social media during the draft. Even as the show is going on, we're constantly checking things.
I was going to say, it's so funny how this is like crept into my life. 7 years ago, when I was introduced to Twitter, I was very resistant to it. I'm like, my initial thing was like, people don't care enough what I'm doing. And that was like kind of like the mantra people had, like, well, I don't want to tweet what I'm eating or whatever. But that's totally not what it is. And if you still think that is what it is, you've totally missed the point. It is a highway of information. And it's so interesting, like a night like the NFL draft, I find myself step in step with social media as I am step in step with the draft. They're almost like intertwined like a piece of DNA nowadays because you're getting picks before they're actually selected on Twitter. You're getting the memes that follow, these picks. You're getting breakdown and video of the players. It's just so interesting how sports and social media are just married to each other right now. And then when you have social media itself as the center of the conversation of the NFL draft.
Right.
It's just incredible.
It's truly amazing how far social media has come because you're right. I used to rag on Twitter. I made fun of Twitter. You're right. People didn't care what I was doing. It's funny. So we all have these things.
And by the way, you can follow me at Buysline.
Yeah. And at 104.5 Radio Brady. We like Twitter now. We love it.
Oh, love it.
But so we have all these things, time hop on this day, all these things that show
those things freak me out.
But the things that you posted years ago. But it's amazing how far it's come because so I look at my time hop every day, right? And so I got Facebook as a senior in high school, and I got it in April, right before I was about to graduate. So we're in my very first weeks here of having Facebook.
Are you embarrassed?
I'm more just number one, who cares? And number two, it's amazing how far it's come because remember how Facebook, it used to be your status would be Zach Bite is.
Yeah.
My first statuses are all song lyrics or Brady Farkas is game versus Saratoga. Brady Farkas is playing Bethlehem today.
Right.
Those are all.
They were almost like away messages. They were almost like a holdover from AIM.
Yeah.
And those time hop things freak me the hell out. I'll click on it. I'm like, oh, let's see what I wrote in 2007. And I'm like, wait, you wrote that on her wall? What were you thinking? Or I'll see a picture of myself and someone, I'll be like, I literally don't speak to that person at all anymore. It's just, sometimes it makes me feel weird inside.
You know what freaks me out is when, especially around the time you're graduating college, everyone's like, look, make sure your Facebook page is professional. Get rid of the pictures you don't want.
Sure.
Get rid of all this stuff. Manage your privacy settings. I cannot stand people change their names on it to hide their identity. I'll see things like so-and-so liked your status. I don't know who this is anymore because your name used to be John Smith, and now it's John with your middle name and things misspelled. I have no idea. But in reference to the draft, again, I mean, social media, we're in here prepping for the show today, and, we weren't watching the early part of the draft, day 3, on television, and what do I see instantly? Adam Schefter says Connor Cook goes to the Raiders, and that's one of the earliest selections on day 3, and that's how I found out about it because I'm just scrolling through Twitter as we're prepping the show.
Yeah, it's like one of these things, and I try to explain this to a couple people who are a little bit older than me and somewhat resistant to it. I'm like, listen, do you watch CNN? Do you open a newspaper? Okay, you do those things? Okay, so you can manipulate this highway of information to whatever you want. If you don't want any of those things and you hate CNN and you hate, politics, okay, only follow sports accounts and you'll get the breaking news on sports. Oh, you only want to, follow 1990s pro wrestling things? Okay, you can do that too.
That would be you, not me.
No, but it's like one of these things, you tailor make it to yourself. And I don't know if you're still hating, oh, Twitter, get off off my lawn. It's like one of these things, like you're not informed on what it is.
Bottom line, social media, you're right. It's taken over our lives. And an event like the draft, to watch it on TV or to follow it online and to follow it on social media, they go hand in hand in hand. Again, as I said, we weren't watching the draft right away as we were prepping for this show, and I saw Adam Schefter tweeting pick by pick here to start day 3. It's Capital Region Sports Saturday, special edition. Brady Farkas, Zach By, taking you up until 6 o'clock. Zach, University at Albany, we talked about the lacrosse program a little while ago. Well, Will Brown in the basketball program, you know, it's like I thought, like on the Capital Region Insider, like I thought I knew a lot about UAlbany basketball, but we've got you, the voice of UAlbany basketball, here now. So I'm a little insecure here about my knowledge.
You know nothing.
So Evan Singletary, Ray Sanders, Peter Hooley all graduate.
Yeah.
People look at it from the outside and they say, okay, Joe Cremo's great. He's going to start next year. He's going to play a lot of minutes. It's going to be great. Mike Rowley's there, big man. Dallas Enema's there. Beyond that, there's a lot of unknowns. Greg Steyer as well. UAlbany has inked some valuable recruits within this past week. What are they bringing in? And I don't know if anyone can replace what you just left behind in Hooley, Sanders, and Singletary, but the cupboard is not bare based on what you're about to tell us.
Yeah, there's no doubt. The cupboard's not bare. Your starting front court comes back. Mike Rowley, Greg Steyer, who are more than serviceable. Very good. Greg Steyer took a huge step forward.
Yeah.
And then you got Joe Cremo, who I even though people understand that he's great, I don't think to the depths of which you're going to understand it a year from now. Cremo, to me, is going to make everyone better. And I, in my mind, could go average 16, 17 points a game this season. So it's about Will Brown and his staff putting pieces around Cremo, Steyer, Rowley, Dallas Enema, and they've inked some. I mean, from what I understand, and obviously you got to wait till these guys show up on campus and perform. But they've inked some good recruits here, a couple wing players, a point guard, and one thing that Will Brown has been able to do, and I don't know how the hell he does it, but he's hit grand slams on these junior college kids. I mean,
really
typically it's like you want to bring a kid for 4 years. He wants to win a championship this coming season. Like this year, he wants to go back to the NCAA tournament. There's no rebuild. They're just reloading. So you lose again, Sanders and Singletary and Hooley, but he's hit home runs with Sanders and Singletary and DJ Evans and Gary Johnson. So they're hoping that this 6'6" wing from junior college, Xavier Cochran, he had offers from MAC schools, Horizon schools. He has 3 years of eligibility left. He's coming from Owens Junior College in Ohio. They have another kid, Devontae Campbell, who's more of a power wing, 6'5". Could see both of those players from what Will Brown has told me. Could see both of those 6'5" and 6'6" wings playing at the same time with Cremo at points at the point guard. But from what Will has told me, they need the new point guard that they're bringing in, AJ Hicks, who I believe is from Sebring, Florida. Don't quote me on that, but I believe he comes from down south. He's not a big point guard, but they need the most impact out of him because that's the most glaring position that they need filled. Cremo can play it too, and even the 3. Dallas Enema can play the 3, and your front court's already set. But you need a legitimate point guard. They've had great point guards here in the past couple of years, and I think they're hoping that AJ Hicks can come in and be that guy.
What do we know about the health and status of Travis Charles? Because that's
a big question, man. Go ahead.
This guy is a front court player who I really, really like. He's really a little good. Undersized height-wise, but he's good vertical leap, good post moves around the hoop. If they had Rowley, Steyer, and him, they're instantly better. What's his status? He has a heart condition. Is he going to play?
He is going to play. He's playing right now. And not only is he playing, he's playing at a high level. I mean, I talked to a couple players on the team that have just echoed the highest praise for Travis Charles. And he's a game changer because at the mid-major level where Albany's at, a lot of times your front court players aren't as skilled and as athletic and don't have the motor that Charles has. He has all those things. If he's 100%, man, that adds a bunch of depth and something that they don't have right now and will make them certainly more dynamic in 2016-17.
And you bring back a Richard Peters as well, who at least gives you serviceable minutes off the bench and who started nearly every game 2 years ago.
Unfortunately for the program, Richard Peters is not coming back. He has decided to forego his last year at Albany and enter the NBA draft. No, I'm just kidding. He's not entering the draft. He's not entering the draft, but he's not coming back. He's not coming back. He's chose to transfer. He's going to, I believe, go to school down south for his final year where his longtime girlfriend is at, and I think he's still going to try to play one more year, but it won't be at Albany. That's for sure.
So it's going to be it's got to be a Division II school, right? Because otherwise you have to talk about sitting out a year.
Yeah, it more than likely it is going to be. He only has one more year of school left, and he wants to play. He likes playing. He's 6'11". He can go get a full scholarship somewhere at the Division II level and play. But unfortunately, because he was one of my favorite guys as a person, he has a great spirit, a classic Canadian, not a bad bone in his body, and he'll be missed. But I think at the front court, they also have two bigs that are set to be signed this week. So I think they're going to be all set in the front court.
Capital Region Sports Saturday. Zach By breaking scoops. Brady Farkas, Zach By. Last segment's coming up. We are both heated. Zach hates the NBA award system, and Deflategate makes me want to throw this pen through the wall.
It's a special edition of Capital Region Sports Saturday. Here are your hosts, Brady Farkas and Zach By.
Steve Kerr wins Coach of the Year in the NBA. Zach, he coached for half the season. This has you up in arms.
I'm tight. I am. I think it's a joke. Steve Kerr's a great coach. He's an NBA champion. There's no doubt about it. But in this case, I thought the voters did a disservice to not only Terry Stotts, who I believe should have won the award, the head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers, but I think it loses legitimacy as a thing. I mean, Steve Kerr missed more than half of the season. And granted, his team was terrific. But if we're blindly voting...
What did he go, 34 and I think Luke Walton went 30
Luke Walton went 34 and
39 and 4. I thought Luke Walton.
I think he was 34 and something. Anyway, it was more than it was. I think it was like half the season. Okay, so Steve Kerr misses half the year, and if we're blindly voting for the award, and when I say we, as speaking of, I'm kind of taking up for the voters. If these guys are blindly voting just based on record, without any context, that is so numbskulled to me. You got a guy in Terry Stotts in Portland who the over-under from Las Vegas on win total was 27.5. That was their win total. And I pulled up some old articles. The USA Today penciled them in for 23 wins. I mean, that is insane. And here they are. They finished 5th in the entire Western Conference in the West. And that guy doesn't win the award. And we have to also just add context to this for you non-hoop heads. The Blazers lost 4 or 5 starters. LaMarcus Aldridge left for San Antonio. Nicholas Batum no longer there. Wes Matthews no longer there. Robin Lopez no longer there. You're slated for 25 wins and you finished 5th in the West, and now you're going to the second round of the NBA playoffs. I think that it was a joke. Kerr's a great coach. He didn't coach for half the season. If you're going to give it to a staff, okay, maybe I can understand that. But Luke Walton had a better record than the guy who won the award. I'm just not on board. Context is everything. It's not black and white. You can't just say, oh, the Warriors won 73 games. He should get no. That's just no.
That's what I would do, is give it to the staff. I think, okay, you want to reward the Warriors for having the best regular season in NBA history, then fine, reward the staff. But making this individual, it also really ticked me off how Steve Kerr gets credit for all these wins on his ultimate coaching record, which says Steve Kerr this year went 73-9. Now, I know Steve Kerr wasn't some absentee coach who never spoke to Luke Walton for the first 43 games of the season. And it was 43 games. Luke Walton coached. He did go 39-4 in those first in those first 43 games. So that's how it goes.
I'm just disappointed that it wasn't fully. I mean, I suppose these guys. I suppose these guys probably did think they thought it through. But when you zoom out and add some perspective and some context, it's like, wait, if Terry Stotts can't get the award, then let's just give it to the guys with the best record every year, because this was the most egregious example that I can remember of this.
Capital Region Sports Saturday. Brady Farkas, Zach By here, the special edition episode installment of Capital Region Sports Saturday. Deflategate, Zach. I thought we were done with this nonsense.
This is like...
It resurfaces again this week. Basically, court rules. Roger Goodell acted within his jurisdiction to suspend Tom Brady. Again, the court does not say explicitly Tom Brady is a cheater who deflated footballs. All it says is that Roger Goodell had enough evidence to act as he saw fit, and he didn't act out of his, out of his power. There's multiple angles to this. Number one, from the Tom Brady side, again, this ruling does not say that he's a cheater. It says specifically, we are not finding him guilty of deflating footballs. We are finding Roger Goodell okay with his ruling because he's the commissioner of the league and he had enough evidence to warrant his decision. And then two, people are upset, that Goodell is judge, jury, and executioner on this stuff. And you know what? Whether you agree with that or not, the players collectively bargained for him to have that power. I heard Levac say it earlier this week, and he's 100% right. What did the players want? Bigger contracts and less full contact practices. They got that, and in exchange, they got Goodell to have this ultimate power.
I'm just exhausted with the topic. I mean, really, it's like one of these things where I'm so fatigued because the bottom of the pyramid in which everything else was predicated on following that led to Deflategate is so minuscule in terms of the actual impact on the game itself. The game.
It was 40-7 that night.
It reminds me of two kids that won't stop kicking and screaming. It's been terrible. I'm so done with it. I hope this is the last time it's ever brought up or I ever have to talk about it or ever have to hear about it because it's getting to the point of nauseam. It's approaching that like Manziel territory where you're like, when is this going to stop coming across my feed? Like I'm done.
Don't you know it's not ever going to be over? Because don't you know Brady's going to fight this?
Which, I mean, I guess, but I think he's just got
a Bills fan. You're a Bills fan.
Yes.
Are you like, yes, we finally got him 4 games, including one against us, so we don't have to play Tom Brady? Are you like, I'm just over it. I don't even care. Play, don't play.
I mean, there's two sides of the coin. We have him week 4, so I'm happy that he won't be there. We'll have a chance to pick up a division win. But I mean, at the same time, I'm just done, dude. I'm done.
You're tapped out on the play.
I really am. I'm just done.
This has been to me, and you know what? It coincides with the 24-hour news cycle, which you and I are a part of as well, so we understand it. But for me, where stories began to get overblown, where I was like, "Oh my God, again with this," was Brett Favre's retirement. Like
there's another one.
That was the first thing that was I started to roll my eyes at.
Tebow.
It went in order. Brett Favre, LeBron's decision, Tebow, then Manziel. And you know what the thing is, and the thing I've started to realize is, you know what, I don't hate Brett Favre. Like, you don't hate LeBron James. You don't hate Tim Tebow. You hate the coverage around them 24/7.
The nature of the beast, man.
You don't hate Jimmer Fredette. You hate that he's got this giant following. Manziel, you can now make a case, okay, you can actually hate him because of the things he's allegedly done to his girlfriend and how he's navigated his own life. But for a while, I was like, you know what? You don't even hate Johnny Manziel. You just hate the attention that he gets. And that is the way this 24-hour news cycle has created things. And again, we're a part of that, and we like to be a part of that, but we do understand the burnout on some of these things.
And there definitely is burnout. There's no doubt about it. And I'm hoping this Tunzel thing doesn't reach that level too, because I was a little bit disappointed for him in the way that things fell out for him the other night, and it's still the topic of conversation. It's one of these things where, the over coverage breeds overreaction, and it is what the classic. It is what it is. And Deflategate, I've had it up to my eyeballs.
Capital Region Sports Saturday. Brady and Zach taking you up until 6 o'clock. 6:30 tonight, we'll have Yankees, Red Sox right here on 104.5 The Team. Michael Pineda on the mound for the Pinstripes as they are in Boston. Zach, did you see earlier this week Tyler Collins of the Detroit Tigers?
Yes.
He makes an error. The fans get on him. He flips off the crowd.
Yeah, I saw that.
And then got demoted. Now, part of it, I'm sure that doesn't help, but part of it also the fact that they've got some guys coming back from injury. Another part of that, he's 2 for 20.
I was going to say 2 for 20. I think was the indicator there. But that was just like a weird thing, flipping off your own crowd. I can't imagine.
Did you ever get into it with a crowd?
Yeah. I mean, I've got into it with a crowd. The one that sticks out.
Did you ever flip them off?
No, I was in a street tournament in Buffalo at what's called the Gus Macker, which is a huge tournament, thousands of people, and there was a hostile crowd, and I remember saying something and back to them, and the place went crazy, and police were there, and it was crazy. But I'm not. Listen, those weren't my people. Flipping off your own people, that's never a good look.
I was never good enough to have to get into it with a crowd. So that's just how, I was playing, when I was playing hoops, I remember that the Gilderland student section was always rough, but I wasn't scoring 25, so you can't look at him and do anything to him when you're scoring 4.
And he's got to be a little bit, have more mental toughness than that. Then you commit an error and you're flipping off the hometown crowd. I mean, come on. You got to work through that.
About the best I've done is, guys in the other dugout try to rattle me, then I strike somebody out, shoot them a little glare. But that's about it. No,
I mean, that's everyday sports stuff.
So,
you know what I mean? Who's flipping off the crowd? Outside of John Rocker.
The best story I ever heard. We've got about 25 seconds. Best story I ever heard was former Troy player Tiki Mabin.
Oh my God, that's one of my favorite. He went under the hoop. Did I tell you this?
Yeah.
The up and under. He hits the ground and one and chucks up some finger, twisted up your fingers, your hometown set, your gang, whatever. And I thought they were going to riot. I thought the Schenectady fans were actually going to come on the court and kill him.
Capital Region Sports Saturday. Brady Farkas, Zach By. Great 2-hour show today. Yankees baseball is coming up in a half hour. Michael Pineda on the mound as the Yanks try to take Game 2 in Boston.